safety culture development is not a race. People are like, our safety culture is really good. And I'm like, yeah, but it's never going to end. It's always going to be evolving. We're always going to have turnover. There's always things that we're going to have to revisit and make sure that they're fresh. And when you get to that point to where your employees see the actions that you're taking and they know that from CEO down, from president down, whatever your structure is, that safety is a value within your company, you're going to see a lot of other business drivers become extremely healthy.
Hello, and welcome to Speaking of Supply Chain, where we explore trends, current events, and innovations impacting the logistics and supply chain industries. I'm your host, Ellen Wood. In today's fast-moving logistics environment, warehouse and production safety is under increasing strain, not just from higher volumes and seasonal spikes, but from shifting regulatory landscapes and internal pressures to maintain throughput at all costs. As federal oversight recedes in some areas, companies are left to uphold their own standards amid rising complexity and risk. From dock congestion to safety culture breakdowns, the margin for error is shrinking. In this episode, I'm speaking with Justin Malone, Director of Field Safety at Miner, to explore how companies can reinforce safety from within through systems, culture, and proactive planning. We'll dig into what it takes to stay vigilant when regulations relax and volumes surge. Welcome, Justin.
Thanks for having me.
A pleasure to have you on the show today. Well, I can't wait to get into our topic for today, but first, let's get to know you a little bit better. Our icebreaker for today is, what is your favorite part of working from home?
Oh, that's a great question. So I came from a manufacturing environment. My previous employers, I would have an hour commute, 30-minute commute, and now I'd made the transition to working remote. So there's a lot of perks. It was it was a bit of a shift for me just because I'm used to that. Show up at the plant at 7, leave at 5:30 or 6, and then the commute to and from was definitely a challenge. But honestly, working from home, probably the biggest perk is that I have a pantry that I do not have to go and pay for because I've already paid for it, and I can snack when I want to. And I will say that another thing my wife would probably call this a perk is, if she has a load of laundry that needs to get done, well, guess what? Justin's at home all day, so he can go and start the dryer, start the laundry. So there's definitely a lot of good. And it's something that going back into a manufacturing environment would be a change for me if I ever had to do that. But I'm happy working from home now.
We only work from home a couple days a week. So obviously we have an office and we're in here. And I can relate to that commute, that 45-minute commute, because our office used to be further away from where I lived. And then we moved offices, and now it's literally 5 minutes away from my house, door to door. I can leave one door and be walking in the other within 5 minutes. And so working from home doesn't really have the same benefit for me because I'm so close to home anyway. But one thing I do enjoy, my husband works from home as well. And on the days that I do work from home, we get to sit and have lunch together. So, when you've got kids and a family and 2 careers and all the things that go with all of those things, just being able to sit down and, make some time to reconnect with your significant other is huge. And that's one of my favorite perks, is just getting to sit down and have lunch with my husband occasionally. Yeah,
it's definitely a better work-life balance. And coming from the safety world, when I worked at a plant, my family didn't really know what I did. They just knew that I kept people safe. So now they get kind of the inside scoop to say, okay, I understand what Dad does now.
Yeah, well, my 5-year-old just thinks that my job is sending emails. So he's not entirely wrong.
No, that's a big part. I get it.
So let's get into our conversation today, which is safety in an era where it's not necessarily mandated, where it's instead a value driver for the business. So we talked, or I mentioned it in my intro, when the guardrails come off, how are companies adjusting internally as external pressures and regulations start receding? Are there examples of organizations, weakening their safety programs just because they don't have to anymore, or becoming more rigorous just to, have that competitive edge? What's going on?
Sure. That's been a hot topic, really of late. And there's really two points that I want to talk about here. With the uncertainty of manufacturing environments, industry, with tariffs and with interest rates and everything that we're all hearing. If anyone tunes into the news, they're hearing it on a daily basis. That has led to a level of uncertainty with businesses, and what that turns into is a business is afraid to spend money. They're afraid to make improvements. With tariffs specifically, a lot of businesses, and what we feel here at Mine, a lot of businesses are cutting back a bit. They're starting to see, we don't know what next month's going to bring. We don't know what 6 months is going to bring. So we need to trim something. And oftentimes, and unfortunately, what's trimmed are the things that they don't see an immediate payback from. And we see it in the preventative maintenance part of the business. And I kind of relate it to kind of the COVID era when people, everything was shut down. People stopped going to the dentist. They stopped going to the doctor. They broke their routine of maybe every 6 months we have a cleaning. Well, I can't go this month, or I can't go to my next appointment. And then once you break that routine, it's much harder to get back into it. And we've seen that people have fallen off on their preventative maintenance. They have, not taken steps to take care of their equipment proactively, which leads to maybe 2 years down the road. You may not see it the first 6 months, but 2-3 years down the road, now that equipment's breaking down, now you're seeing downtime, you're seeing safety concerns or issues within these environments. And that's really, something that we try to pitch to employees. Don't cut your proactive measures. Those do pay you back in the long term. And all it takes is one shutdown, one issue with a doctor, and some of these businesses are losing thousands of dollars a minute. So, ultimately you have to be careful. You have to be very strategic. The other point that I want to talk about is around OSHA and how, we've seen cuts with OSHA inspectors. We've seen kind of a pullback from having, accountability for a lot of industries from an OSHA standpoint. And from the safety world, if you really care about your culture, that shouldn't change a thing. Some industries, though, they see, okay, we can breathe now. We can do things that we've wanted to do that, now that the accountability measure is not as strong. But I want to warn that this is temporary, and I guarantee you OSHA will be back to where they were. So you can't take your foot off the gas when it comes to safety. And, I want to talk about a few things, around culture and all that, but I'll kind of wait for that. But OSHA will be back. It's just something that we have to make sure it's ingrained in your business to where it's not something that slips. And a lot of that, there's multiple factors with that, PMs being one, but there's other safety activities that you just can't let slip.
Okay. So you mentioned loading docks specifically. Why are those still the most dangerous areas? I mean, it's just a door, but is it just the activity that's taking place where it's just a highly volatile and dynamic environment? That singular area has so much happening. Is that the reason for the safety concerns with that specific area?
Yeah, dock areas, warehouse areas where you have a lot of dock doors. Oftentimes you're going to have a lot of powered industrial trucks. You're going to have forklifts. You're going to have material handling devices. And with that, you also have a lot of foot traffic. So there's a reason why OSHA keeps this on, as a top emphasis program. It's because those interactions really have to happen, but it's how you manage that pedestrian lift truck interaction that separates you from being a safe organization, or an unsafe or lucky organization. Because as people work in these environments, they really get desensitized to the risk of a forklift. They've got their coworker on there. They know, hey, he or she's always looking out for me. All it takes is one little slip, one sense of complacency, and they're just not forgiving. And when you don't have that clear separation or those walkways or presence sensing devices, there's a number of things that you can implement. It really is a risk that you're taking on a daily basis, and our employees get, like I said, desensitized to it.
This reminds me of something very similar, and it is the backup camera in cars, where, those of us who grew up learning how to drive before this technology existed, we've got the ingrained sense of, no, you have to turn around, you have to check your blind spot, you have to check everywhere, you have to look. And now that we have these cameras, there's a sense of complacency, and so many more accidents are happening because you trust that the camera is telling you truth, when in fact it even says, objects in the mirror are closer than they appear. So, and I mean, even someone I know who works for the auto industry was saying, he's never had more accidents since he started trusting that technology. So it sounds to me like part of this problem is that sense of trust that we put in these automated, material handling, in these vehicles, in this capability of doing this much work in this much space. And we're trusting this technology to do the work in a safe way without remembering that, humans are the ones who mess up most of all. Like we are the problem.
Right. What comes to mind, and if anyone in the safety world's they've heard this a million times, is trust but verify. I mean, you can use that as a tool, but the best tool that you have are your eyes and your brain. And that's your human behaviors. But you have to, to your point, I learned by using mirrors too. We didn't have backup cameras, and now I'll check the backup camera, but my eyes default to, okay, let me check my mirrors, because those aren't going to lie to me.
True. Yeah. Your eyes are not going to lie to you in the way that a camera could. So when we're talking about, some of these safety culture changes, what distinguishes a compliant operation from maybe a truly safety focused one? Is there a distinction that's obvious when you walk into this facility?
I wouldn't say obvious, but you spend a little bit of time, you can certainly tell the difference between a compliant.
You see the signs.
Yeah. Between the compliant organization and an organization that truly values safety culture. I'll use an example, like a safety checklist. A safety checklist is essentially the definition of compliance. We're going to check the boxes. We're going to do what we need to do because this is a metric that we track. That's good. That's critical in an organization. The compliance aspect, I'm not skimping out on it. I'm saying that it's just a piece of the puzzle. The rest of it, you look at it as a foundation of a house. Well, the compliance is the foundation, but look at the rest of the house. What else do we need to do? And when you get to be an emerging safety culture, or even a stronger world-class safety culture, things that you'll see are the employees understand why they're doing those inspections, understand why compliance is a tool that they have to use, or that they can use because they see the value in it. And when an employee sees the value in something and they hear it from their leadership that, hey, this is important and this is why, then they understand that it's a critical piece of their job and that we're doing it because we care about their safety. We care about their well-being. So that's kind of your line in the sand. Are we checking boxes, or do our employees truly understand why we're following through with all these compliance activities, or these, what I like to call leading activities, because they're proactive. It's not a reactionary checklist that we're doing. But that's how you would see it. If you could ask a couple employees in a manufacturing environment, hey, let me see that checklist. Why do you do this? And they give you an answer that is, that you get a feeling they truly understand this is important. That's how you see the difference.
Yeah, they have a personal belief and a stake in making sure that the safety protocols are maintained and executed appropriately.
That's exactly right.
I mean, that's an easy thing to talk about, to say, management just needs to have the right culture to drive this and make sure that they're, explaining this to their teams. But what happens when that executive doesn't have the buy-in? I mean, that doesn't mean that the team can't care, but, how do you get them to see safety as, a cost center rather than a value driver?
Right. And that is a challenge that, an executive is looking at the bottom line. Their goal is to make the business, profitable, impress shareholders, excuse me. But at the end of the day, from a from a safety professional standpoint, there are ways of speaking their language. And I don't mean that in any disrespectful way. You just know what makes an executive tick. There's certainly ways of speaking their language. And when you bring in safety factors and explain to them how, hey, this isn't something you're going to see a payback on, but this is so you could, and I may get into that in just a second, but this is something that is going to prevent you from having to spend money. It's going to be attractive to customers, which is going to allow us to get more customers. And I'm in the service industry, Miner's in the service industry. And before we can even quote a job or do anything with some of our bigger customers, or really any customer, they're looking at our performance. They're looking at our safety performance. They want to know what our incident rate is. They want to know what our loss records look like. And when you can use that as a selling point to say, hey, you want to do business with us because we're a very safe company and we take that extremely serious, that will speak to an executive. And when an executive understands that it really is a driver of the business, then their message becomes consistent with the safety professional's message, which hopefully is consistent with your management, all the way down to your hourly employees. If everyone is speaking that same message, you've won. That's something that you can be proud of, because it truly is ingrained in your business and it's not just prioritized day to day.
Well, and you mentioned safety incident data. So what kind of data, how should companies gather and use that data? Especially when we're talking about, seasonal peaks. We're in the midst of it right now. We've got some seasonal peaks. Are there red flags that typically get ignored before a major incident occurs? Or is it just diligence?
Absolutely. And it's something that is, I've been in the safety world for about 14 years, and this is probably one of the hardest metrics to track, because it's near miss reporting. Near miss reporting is so difficult because although something happened, in the eyes of the employee in which it happened to, no one was hurt, nothing was damaged. So hey, we got off with one here. So I got lucky this time, and they move on with their day to day. So unless the employees truly understand the importance of a near miss and how it's something that we can be proactive on in the company, that's, it is a miss really across all industry that we're not getting enough near miss reporting. And more importantly, if they are reported, we have to make sure that we're taking action on them. There's, in the safety world, there's a pyramid called the Heinrich pyramid, and people argue about the totals here, but the general concept of it makes a lot of sense. And that's, if it's 300,000 unsafe acts or unsafe behaviors or issues or opportunities on the floor, that means there's 30,000 near misses that are tied to that, or first aids, which means there's 300 serious OSHA recordables, which leads to a fatality. Kind of what that means is if we can eliminate these near misses, we can take proactive approaches before someone gets injured, that it's going to make us a lot more distant from that fatality. It's gonna kind of give us a lot of information that's going to prevent activities that lead to something very serious. And near miss reporting, again, is probably the best tool that we can use, but our employees have to understand why there has to be recognition behind it. Warren Buffett said, "Show me your incentives and I'll show you your results." It's easy to incentivize somebody on production. It's easy to incentivize even spontaneously on, hey, our plant made it a year with no OSHA recordable. But that's reactive. That's not something that we're not, taking that time to say, hey, this is what we want you looking for. This is what's going to drive our safety. And a kudos goes a long ways. Just saying, thank you, great job, a shout out in front of the team. That's what really makes an employee change their mindset and allows your organization to get that golden information from the floor that managers they don't have the ability to be everywhere all at once. But if you've got 500 people in a manufacturing plant, that's 500 sets of eyeballs that can see risks, get those risks brought to your attention, and then management supervisors take action on closure of those risks.
Well, and it sounds simple, but we know that, again, we're talking about people here, and people have different feelings and different experiences that make them oftentimes hesitant to bring these things to management to say, oh, this almost happened. I almost got hurt because XYZ, whatever the reason was. But there's a fear of retaliation. There's a fear of, not being looked upon favorably in your position because you screwed up at some point. And this is a screw up that we're trying to record and capture data on. So how do you create a culture where the employees really feel safe and able to share that data and give those reports and report these things that are happening within the company that they're not going to get, retaliated against or, how do we do that? How do we change? Yeah. How do we change that culture so they don't feel like they're tattling?
Yeah. No, when we first, I'll say Minor, when we first started to really hone in on this, that was a major roadblock because people think, hey, my boss only wants to hear that the job's done and hey, we're good to go. He doesn't want to hear about this other stuff because it takes up his day on issues that I've identified. And I don't want to be the whistleblower here, but
exactly. And to your point, it doesn't look good. Now we have, we have an incident. We don't have, so many days without an incident. Now we have an incident. We're starting over. Like that's got to be demoralizing to these teams to think that, oh, I'm making it worse.
Yeah. So one thing that I've seen a lot of success in is, I talked just a second ago about incentivizing, having incentive programs. And how it's easy to incentivize on things that drive the business from a productivity standpoint. It's a little bit more difficult to incentivize on these types of activities. We use, it's actually an OSHA terminology, it's stop work authority. And stop work authority is where an employee is on a job site doing a job, sees something that's unsafe and has the empowerment to say, hey, this is unsafe. We need to find a safe way to do it. That message has to come from leadership that's what we want them doing. We have to instill and empower them to say, this is your right. You can say, hey, because I care about myself, because I have a family, you've told me I can do this. Hey, this job is unsafe. But here's the piece that's oftentimes missed and why stop work authority is something that, may have a black eye at times. We don't want that to be a stop card just because someone doesn't want to do the job. So we make them a part of the solution. They stop the work. They're on the job site. They're seeing, or they're at the piece of equipment. They're seeing what's going on. We say, okay, give us your solution. What do you think how do you think we can do it? To where you can continue with your job safely. We see that a lot at Minor between, the use of a ladder and the use of a scissor lift. Of course, a scissor lift's more expensive. It takes time to get it there. A ladder's quick. Pull it off the truck and go do the job. But at the end of the day, we want to be a ladder last company. And reason being is because, first off, you can do your job a lot easier from a scissor lift. It's a lot more efficient. It's a tool that gives you the ability to use both hands. Whereas a ladder, yeah, it's quick. Yes, it's cheap, and we can get that job done quickly. It's not the right tool for the job in a lot of cases, and we don't want to default to that. So we have a lot of stop work authorities where employees say, hey, I'm up on this ladder, I'm 12 feet up, and it just doesn't feel safe. Can we get a scissor lift? And management takes the steps. Yep, have one there in 45 minutes. They'll call a rental company, and then we can not only do that job more efficiently, but our employees are safe. They're safe, and they see that we took action on their concern.
So what role do you see of, we've got all this automation in place. And I would say, let's take out just, the automation like the scissor lift or a forklift. Like those are things we're all used to. That's standard practice now. When I'm talking about automation, I'm thinking of, the new AI or digital capabilities of monitoring systems in place and different, protocol, different processes. So what are some of these technology things that are coming about that are going to be able to enhance this capability to, check these or collect this data on near misses or, sense something that is not to its peak safety, the latter last. Are there AI tools? Are there technologies that are coming into place that are able to support organizations with this task of maintaining safety in their facility?
There absolutely are. And this is something that I kind of nerd out on it a bit, because even though I'm not, I'm not in the manufacturing environment anymore, it's still something that, we even look at some of these technologies and how in the service industry, how can we use them? What you'll see in a lot of manufacturing environments or warehousing environments are the use of, we call them RGVs. There's a lot of different terminologies, robotic guidance vehicles. RGVs and other devices like that, their brain's a computer. It's something that we give it a mission. It can go do that mission perfectly, but we have to make sure that while it's performing its task, that we have the protective measures in place to keep our people safe. Is it a safe option? 100%. But we have to be careful that we're not skimping out on these protective measures. There's area scanners. There's things that presence sensing devices that are attached to these pieces of equipment as a safe measure to make sure that they're not interacting in a negative way with our employees. One thing that I think a point that I hope everyone takes this into consideration when they're looking at presence sensing devices for any type of equipment is this is a device that really does take expert knowledge to set up. It's something that, can you hook one up in-house? Yeah, sure. You may have an electrician that's savvy, but bringing in an expert and not cutting that corner is paramount to it working the way that it should. And the last thing you want is that false sense of security, that feel good. Hey, we've got presence sensing devices on this. We shouldn't have any issues. But little do you know that presence sensing device is not set up correctly, and you have a blind spot. And in industry, there are such things as perfect storms, and we don't want that perfect storm to lead to a catastrophic incident. From a reporting standpoint, and just what information you can get from these devices, not just on RGVs, but they've got presence sensing devices to where you can monitor foot traffic. You can monitor, I'll call no-go zones where people should not be. And if there's a sense, if it picks up on someone, you're getting that data. You're getting those close calls where an employee came too close to a piece of equipment that they're not supposed to be that close to. And now that information's captured, we can see exactly where it was. We can see the duration, and now you can react to that. Something that would have never been reported probably because it was between one person and a machine. Now we're getting that information and we can take action on it. So AI is going so far. I'll even cross over just into incident analysis, from where what used to take 4 to 5 hours to go through and break down incidents and see by location where your risks are, by plan or by department. Now you can plug that into any kind of AI module, and it's going to give you that detail in about 15 seconds. So it's made things a lot more efficient. The information's right there at our fingertips. And the challenge now is to use that new information, to put it into play, and don't just hold on to it because it's gold. We have to take action on it.
Well, and then I guess that leads me to my last question is, what examples have you seen of where a safety culture was improved and it led directly to improving some of their operational KPIs?
Oh, this is a good one. Well, I'll start by saying that safety, just having a strong safety culture, it really does build all parts of the organization. And I'll dive into that a little bit more. I mean, I have a few regions that they are clearly my safest regions. They're hitting on all scorecards. They're, from a compliance standpoint, they're knocking it out of the water. We see a lot of stop work authorities where the supervisors are taking action and fixing it. And lo and behold, they're our most productive regions as well. So, I think what really drives that is the amount of focus that it takes to have a strong safety culture. And when you train someone to have that focus, to appreciate and to follow standard operating procedures, policies, whatever it may be, when that's instilled in safety, it's going to trickle over to the quality of work. hey, this is the way I've always done it. Well, we do have an SOP. Let's see what it says straight from the manufacturer. Let's do it this way. And boom, now that mindset has changed from that employee because he sees that, well, that worked too. So maybe I do need to read these things. Maybe I do need to follow these procedures. And it just, it really is, if you have safety ingrained in your business and employees understand that you care about their safety and they have the empowerment to speak up, they're going to have higher morale. They're going to speak up on more issues than just safety issues. And ultimately, you're going to create a very strong workforce that is hitting on all cylinders. I've seen it across the board, but it's that challenge of making sure that our employees understand the why behind everything that we do. And if we're not explaining that why and we're just pushing things out on them, you're going to get negative connotation of the activities that you're trying to implement.
Yeah, it sounds like just utilizing the positive peer pressure of this type of focus is going to raise the enablement of the whole team. And they're just going to be bought in to the business and, what it is that they're trying to accomplish as a team together within that organization.
That's exactly right. The whole buy-in piece. When an organization understands that you care about them, not only just their livelihood, but safety, they're going to be bought in. They're not going to lay in bed on Sunday night and say, man, I dread tomorrow. I got to go back to that place. They're going to say, hey, I get to go work for mine, or I get to go work for XYZ company tomorrow, because at the end of the day, this is a company that truly cares about me and it's a pleasure to work for them. That's the ultimate goal. And that's, we'll forever be chasing that. Safety culture development is not a race. People are like, our safety culture is really good. And I'm like, yeah, but it's never going to end. It's always going to be evolving. We're always going to have turnover. There's always things that we're going to have to revisit and make sure that they're fresh. And when you get to that point to where your employees see the actions that you're taking and they know that from CEO down, from president down, whatever your structure is, that safety is a value within your company. You're going to see a lot of a lot of other business drivers become extremely healthy.
All right. Well, thank you, Justin, so much for joining us today for this lovely discussion on safety culture. I have a feeling it's going to continue to be a large part of the conversation in 2026 as we continue to face a lot of these regulatory, let's just call them disturbances. We don't know what's happening. We don't know if it's staying or going, but it's constantly in flux. So the more that we can drive this culture for organizations, I think the better we're going to be.
Sure thing. Well, I appreciate you having me. I love talking about safety and safety culture development. So hopefully listeners out there, I give a little golden nugget to somebody and they can try to implement that, because there are no trade secrets in safety. We all want to make sure people are safe.
I like that. So warehouse safety isn't a checklist. It's a mindset, a culture, and a leadership priority. Your insights remind us that in times of regulatory uncertainty and operational stress, the companies that lead on safety won't just protect their people, they'll outperform. Thank you again for joining us as we explore what it takes to build resilient, responsible supply chains. To our listeners, if you found today's episode valuable, be sure to hit that subscribe button so you never miss an episode. And if you're interested in being a guest on our show, you can reach me at podcast@mebach.com anytime.